Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. We are going to begin each week as we do by introducing my co-host Ruben Bressler.
Hello.
Aaron Campbell.
Hey.
Hey. And as we also do, ladies and gentlemen, each and every week we are going to talk about the first pick. The first pick, the number one thing that has been on Magic players' minds in the social media channels, on the Reddits, on the Facebooks, on the Twitters, are $80 Battle for Zendikar Fat Packs. Battle for Zendikar Fat Packs that are more expensive than their $39.99 manufacturer suggested retail price. This has caused some uproar, some harsh words from different people. Some people saying, like that this uses the G word, which would be gouge, upon which I don't feel so. What happens in these types of scenarios, just my own opinion for this one, is, you have a market that is willing to pay X dollars for Y product. You have the supply. You have the demand. And if that market is willing to pay more than the suggested retail price, you can have people buy it for that price. You could also say, no, I'm going to stick to what is manufacturer suggested for various reasons. It could be that you wanted to make your customers feel more loyal to the store because you're giving your customers that value, essentially, that is there, that you are not taking advantage of. And the thing is that if they're priced at $55, they're priced at $60, they're priced at whatever they are above the suggested retail price, it's only because people are paying it. If people didn't pay it, then it wouldn't be on sale for that amount. It's just how it works. And when you have a scenario like that, and you have a situation where you say, well, we're going to charge whatever we want in order to get this, where we need it to be, or what the market is willing to pay. That the both sides of those transactions, none of that is sort of, neither party are unhappy with that. If you're willing to say, I will give you $50 for the fat pack, you'll sell it to me for $50, that's a great transaction. We're having a good old time. That's good. So when we have, the ability to charge what the market will bear, either a business will or they won't. And that's just kind of how it works. Aaron?
So I did some research on this because I wasn't fully informed of everything going on. And I never thought I would see the day where I would use anything written by Jeebus as a point of reference, but I'm going to. So he brought up a couple of really good points, and there's a couple I want to touch on. So first off, people are using the word gouging. They're using that word quite a lot. And I don't think people really understand what gouging means. If you go to a theme park and it's a 100-degree day.
Stick my thumb in your eye.
Right down. Right
there. Wasn't that a card from Theros? I Gouge? No, it was I Arrow.
I Gouge. Yeah. It was great. It was from Innistrad, wasn't it?
No.
It was Theros because it killed the Cyclops. Unbelievably sweet. All right, go ahead.
Flavor. So gouging is, if you're at a theme park and it's really warm outside and the only place you can get water is the theme park, and the theme park charges you $7 for a bottle of water, you have nowhere else to get your water. That's gouging. In a situation like this, you can go to Target, you can go to Meijer, you can go to Walmart, I've heard some people say they went to Walgreens. You have options. I bought my box from Cool Stuff Inc. because they sponsor my show. And so I paid less for it because I went to Cool Stuff. I could have gone to TCG Player. I could have gone to Channel Fireball. It's not as if there's one site that has all the fat packs and they're charging more than they should be. Right. So I think that's a common misconception, is that gouging is happening, because it's not. The other thing I find really interesting that Jeebus brought up is that this happened before with the Grixis Commander decks. There was so much demand for them because everybody wanted the True Name Nemesis, and there weren't that many out there. So the price for them went up because there were so few of them, and then people were like, print more. So Wizards went ahead and printed more, and then they sat on the shelves and nobody bought them, because the reason why people were buying them wasn't to use them. They were buying them for this one card, and because there were so many copies of that card already out there, it wasn't seen as a good buy anymore. There was no value or real EV from doing it. And I think this might be the same situation. People are saying, buy more, print more, we want to buy more. But are you really going to buy more, or are they going to print a whole bunch more more, and they're going to sit there because the contents are already out there. And I think this all kind of ties into why people are even buying the fat packs. A lot of the people that are complaining about this never bought fat packs in the first place. You only want them because of the lands. So you can go on Puka Trade and trade in your old commons, your old uncommons, and get the lands you want with the specific art that you want. You can go on Star City, you can go on Cool Stuff, you can buy exactly what you want, where you don't have to spend $60 on a fat pack. You can spend $20 and get the playset of Neat Forest that you wanted. There's just so many ways to get around this that I think it's all kind of silly.
I think there's kind of a focusing of what is in the fat pack, why is it that you want it so badly, and why is there such an uproar? Because if there's all this value to be gained, yet you're not getting all that value, but everyone else is, and you're kind of upset about it, that's a different kind of outrage versus just saying like, well, I don't like the people who are paying $60 for this thing that I think is worth $40. Well, then buy it somewhere else. Educate yourself. That to me was one of the big things. Like if anything else, I'm hoping that Magic players take away that big box stores are have these products and you're able to get them at that retail price that you are happy to pay. Otherwise, you can pay a different price for a different thing. I've actually seen some really cool and interesting retailers say, well, in my store, I've basically created my own, build your own fat pack. I've taken an old fat pack box and I put, 9 packs of Zendikar in there. I've told them they can get however many basic lands they want from Battle for Zendikar, the exact ones that they choose for the same retail price as a Battle for Zendikar fat pack. What is it, that you're sort of trying to recreate in these experiences? Or is it just about the fact that that World Wake fat packs are like $250, and if you just sit on this thing long enough, it will increase in value? And with those fat packs, there are older fat packs, whether they're Innistrad, World Wake, whatever. Those fat packs are expensive. At which price, at which point did they begin to kind of go upwards? And at which point were you unhappy or uncomfortable with those price increases? Because they happened and it's real and the market value of those things has risen. So maybe it's rising too fast for many people's liking, but regardless, it only exists at that price because there are people willing to pay that price.
Right.
Ruben?
And that's my main problem with I have no patience for these arguments. This argument pops up every maybe year and a half or so over one reason or another, right? The first commanders were because, there aren't enough scavenging oozes, so they're like $70 a piece. We need more scavenging ooze fat pack things, or commander decks. And then the Grixis commander decks were like, we're out of Baleful Strixes and True Name Nemesises, so we need more of these. And then now we're doing this because people just want expeditions and the new battle lands, and they want all the things that they can get out of these new fat packs. And so it shocks me that the Magic community gets surprised by this every time, because Magic is like such a weird, self-contained economy that, it's basically the only game that's created its own economy. Baseball cards, it's similar to that, but this is a game. It's slightly different. And so we've decided that these pieces of cardboard that have delightful art and rules text and stuff on one side, and then the same thing on the back that says Deck Master, even though that's not a thing anymore. These are the things that have value. We've decided that those have value. But as a culture, we've also decided that Bitcoins have value, right? Or that gold has value, right? Like we've just assigned arbitrary numbers to things. The New York Stock Exchange trades in stuff that doesn't even exist. Like, stocks aren't things. Like, you can have a piece of paper that says you own a stock, but that's not what a stock is, right? And so the economy is entirely built on what people are willing to pay for anything.
Right.
That's how barter systems work. Getting upset at how the barter system works is beyond weird. This is the first time that this has actually happened since trading has, stopped being... what's the last time that you traded a Magic card for another Magic card? It doesn't happen anymore. You have Puka Trade, you have eBay, you have all these dealers, big ones and little ones. You go to every GP and there's 100 dealers, and then there's, just folks who aren't dealers, but they have huge binders and they might as well be dealers. They aren't exchanging in cash, but they give you dealer prices on trading in your cards, basically.
Right.
And so there isn't just you and then a dude that's your age, right? Like when I was 13, I'd be like, I will trade you this Goblin Welder for your Grim Monolith.
Oh God, you played red even as a kid?
Oh yeah, man. Those weren't red cards.
those were combo cards.
Those were flaming jet or whatever as actual red cards. But look, let me
just bring it back home. Bring it back home. Come on.
You could trade Magic cards, which, I mean, the game is a trading card game, but I actually haven't seen people just trading cards. Now, maybe it's just a part of the culture that I'm not involved in anymore, because I don't really own cards. And I don't think any of us are really too involved in the trading culture anymore.
Well, I think a lot of that comes from, at least for me, I get store credit for doing my show, and
right. And it's part of the process of like, we make media, so now we have more connections. Like, I borrow decks from people that have collections. Sure. So, like, I don't own cards myself.
Well, we're just not part of that culture. We're not part of that sort of environment anymore. That's not to say it doesn't happen, but
right.
I just think that there's
my ivory tower. I don't know what.
Right. There are better tools now.
From all my famous friends.
There are better tools, so you don't get unequal values for your trades like you used to, which is like, oh, I didn't know that this card has spiked in price. Oh, I didn't know that this card is now played in one of the top decks. Like, whatever.
Now you have the internet, and everyone has the internet, and everyone has an iPad and can look up the prices on site.
I don't have an iPad.
Well, you can use your Scry magazine or whatever. Back in the day, that had
Inquest.
2 gold prices. Inquest, right?
Yeah, Inquest.
It says here that Shivan Dragon is $11, and it says here that forbids are $5.50. So I'll give you 1 Shivan Dragon for 2 forbids. Little do they know that the latest Scry has come out, and I just got you for $1.50 or whatever. Like, that's how trading used to work.
That used to happen. That's a real story.
It's and now you've got basically these bargain hunters that are like, guys, you've got to go to Target. They accidentally started selling stocking tigers in these repackaged packs, and that's how you get your value now, right?
Sure.
I'm sort of disconnected from this issue, obviously, but I'm not disconnected from the social media backlash of it, and it's shocking that it's this vociferous.
I mean, again, like you said, we've been through this. Like, these fat packs are a one-time print run. They are only made them once. They don't reprint them. That's part of their allure. That's part of why they're so valuable, is that they're only one-time products, and they're cool like that, and they're unique like that. And for me, the issue and the thing that I would rather, I love the fact that the professor is like, you guys, like, they shouldn't be $80, but they are. Again, why? Because people are paying for it. But rather, the fact that he says, go to Walmart, go to Target, go to Walgreens, go to Barnes & Noble, go to wherever they can find them for the actual price. Help educate people as to where they can get their products. Don't be upset that some other people are charging prices that other people will pay for them. I mean, that to me doesn't work.
The S in MSRP stands for suggested.
Sure.
So they can charge whatever the hell they want.
Right.
I think it's also fascinating that there's still this idea that game stores are like rolling in dough. Right. I think there've been several local game store owners that have been coming forward, and they're like, I'm making enough to like keep the lights on. Like, I don't know where you think I live, like how you think I'm living or exactly, but the markup on things. I remember talking to my local game store owner, and I think he said that Wizards did increase costs from their end that the store owners now have to make up for, and a lot of these times it's like they're barely making enough to get by, and so if this is what a store needs to do, in some cases they're still losing money even when they do raise the price a little bit, or what we perceive to be a little bit. They're still not making that much off that item. So I think there needs to be more said from the business side of things too. There's a lot of things we just don't understand.
Right. I just I think that those who haven't really seen or know kind of the economics behind it and why the market is working the way it does and why these prices are showing up like this, it's just one of those things that they should probably spend some more time and read up on as to why these things are $60 or $80. Not to be upset and not to blame those companies for doing so, but rather say like, wait a minute, why is this a thing? And there's this factor and that factor and this factor, and if that's what they want to charge for it, that's what they're they can. And if they want to make it lower to sell them, they'll make it lower to sell them.
Yeah, I mean, Magic's an expensive hobby, and we're going to talk more about how Magic's an expensive hobby here in a second. But it's like all hobbies are expensive.
Yeah,
sure. It's like if you make model trains, that's an expensive hobby. If you play Magic, they're all expensive. All hobbies should be expensive. Otherwise, they're just activities. Like, isn't that? I don't know where the break point is for a hobby.
I mean, but, definition of hobby, definition of activity.
I don't know
how much activity becomes a hobby.
But yeah, Magic's not an inexpensive hobby for sure.
Sure, which does segue.
This is part of that. Unless you play Pauper. Yeah.
Right, well, if you'd like. But it does segue pretty nicely into our next topic, which is the StarCityGames.com Indianapolis Open, which basically set what little metagame it could, has been set so forth, where the average price of a top 8 deck in that event was $640.
That's a lot of dollars.
That's a lot of dollars. So if we're in for $650, You know, you got to think
For
and imagine. For standard. We're not talking, this wasn't a modern event. This was a standard event. You kind of go, well, what's happening? Well, there's a few things that's happening. The first basically is that Jace, Viren's prodigy, I feel at this point, is a development mistake. It is too good for what it's doing and the price that it's doing it at. It is a card that, much like Jace the Mind Sculptor, and yes, I went there, it doesn't help you when you're losing. You know, people are like, well, it doesn't help you when you're losing. Well, neither did Jace the Mind Sculptor. It doesn't matter. But what Jace did was he didn't really win the game on his own. He just made sure that you won it. So you have this kind of incremental, I'm drawing cards because of his first ability. I'm flashing back other cards because of his second ability. I'm slowing them down because of his other ability on the Planeswalker part. Like, those big incremental advantages start to add up. The fact that you can have a flip Jace and an unflip Jace next to one another, which is kind of amazing. Yeah. So, you know, the ability to do that and kind of have that stuff happen, you know, it's just a little too much, basically. And, you know, it's one of those things I kind of really enjoy the fact that things kind of sneak up on people like that they don't really pay attention to, like, what it was like. Well, you know, everyone thought Jace was bad, and then Jace was just like $20 or just like $25, and, you know, like, now all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, every blue base deck needs 4 Jaces, and it's open in a set that wasn't open that much. And if you're going to have a powerful and popular mythic that's open in a set that wasn't open that much, you know, one of the best and most interesting stats, you know, I think came from the fact that of the top 64 decks, there were 89 copies of Jace. However, I'm sorry, let me look here. There were 87, a full 78% saturation, if you will. And I'm getting a lot of this stuff from Saffron Olive, who writes at MTG Goldfish, which I think he does great work. But however, Gideon, ally of Zendikar, showed up 90 times in the top 64 decks. That's more than any other Battle for Zendikar card. Not close. Another all-star. It's good in aggro, good in mid-range, good in control. Going to be looking like one of the best Planeswalkers ever, yet Jace is over here now at $75 and climbing, and Gideon is not. And part of that is because Gideon's going to be opened a lot more because he's in Battle for Zendikar versus Jace. And the fact that they reprinted Hangerback Walker in an event deck, but not Jace, well, all of a sudden Hangerback Walker's price is half of what it used to be. Yeah. And the EV that you're gained by buying a box of Magic Origins, because it now can have a Jace in it, is kind of lowered because it's not also going to have a $20 to $25 Hangerback Walker in it. So if you have the EV of a deck or an EV of a box of Magic on average, and you say then average box of Magic Origins at the, I think it was the TCG low prices is what he has here, was $60. Well, unless you're getting a box for $60 or less, you're not going to get your EV out of it because of the, you know, expected ability to pull mythics and or rares that you want out of it. So that's kind of where we're at. So it's not worth it to buy Magic Origins boxes to open, yet Jace is just climbing like an all-star. Even if Jace gets to $100, it's just not going to move that needle enough because you only open so many Jaces per boxes of Magic Origins, and it's not moving the needle enough to make it worth buying them yet. So when you're in that kind of weird period where everybody runs them, everybody needs them, and you need 4 of them. You don't run like 2 Jaces, you run 4 Jaces. And that's kind of where we're at.
Well, I think the thing that's contributing to the Jace problem is that Jace is seeing play in 2 other formats. I saw him at my Legacy GPT this past weekend.
As you should. The card is bananas.
I'm not saying I shouldn't, but I'm just saying is, you know, what you said is you were saying how many decks featured it at the Standard Open. Right. Go through the Modern listings. Go through MTG Goldfish. See how many decks are trying to make him see play in Modern. Go through Legacy. See the decks that are trying to make him see play there. There's so much more demand for him than I think there is for Gideon right now, at least across the board.
Across different formats.
Magic Origins is actually, its price history is eerily similar to that of World Wake, in that, you know, when the set first came out, everyone was like, oh man, Jace is great, but look at all these other cool mythics that'll retain their value, like Vengevine, you guys. Right? Look at all these cool mythics.
Vengevine was in Rise.
Sorry, Rise. Well, I mean, not.
So is it mirroring World Wake or is it mirroring Rise?
Trying to remember.
I want to say World Wake. World Wake had.
I think it was World Wake.
World Wake had Jace. World Wake had Stoneforge.
World Wake had Jace, and World Wake had Stoneforge, but Stoneforge was a rare.
Right.
And so it was. Do you know what the second most expensive mythic before this set came out? The second most expensive mythic from World Wake was Dragon Master Outcast.
I knew
which
that one.
just got reprinted and was like an $8 mythic, right? Something similar is going to happen to Origins, where Jace is just going to be $100, and then the second most expensive one's going to be Nissa at $8 or whatever, right? Of the mythics.
Sure.
Now, of course, there's the rares that are good, but mythics really are what drive the price.
Right.
And the fact that, you know, and you can quote me on this, Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, is the best blue creature that's ever been printed. Quote Ruben Bressler, 2015. It is the best blue creature that's ever been printed, and I don't think it's particularly close.
Really? You don't think it's a little bit of competition from Snapcaster on this one?
I don't.
Wow.
I don't know, girl.
Now, I agree that it's in the run. We're talking neck and neck right now. We're looking at what we're seeing. And again, I was talking about this earlier. I love to watch the development mistakes happen because you see it just every week. They just kind of trudge along to like, oh my God, this card is good. Oh my God, this card is really good. Oh my God, it's way better than I thought it was. Oh my God, we have a $100 mythic in standard again. Right. This kind of slow bleed out to like, oh my God, he's everywhere in modern. Oh my God, he's seen vintage play. Have you really? And then you have one set and you have one promo from the San Diego Comic-Con, and that's it. You don't get any more. And Wizards just can't reprint this card easily unless they decide to like run an event deck and all of a sudden throw Jace's in it.
Yeah. Do you think that he could be banned? Like this could get that far?
It depends on how much he saturates. Yeah, just like I think Jace.
Because if I remember correctly, I think I read somewhere that there hasn't been a standard banning since Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Correct.
That's correct.
And
Stoneforge.
Right, so to have it be another Jace, that's pretty eerie.
Yeah, and my favorite thing about that banning was, remember there was an event deck that had Stoneforges in it, and you could run it in tournaments as long as you kept it the exact 75 of the event deck. That always cracked me up.
There's a guy that built a foil version of the event deck and played that in a tournament, and I always loved that. That was so funny. But yeah, I think that, you know, it's it is close to being bannable. The thing about Jace, though, is that it's not taking over in one deck like Jace the Mind Sculptor did. Like, it had partners in crime that made standard quote-unquote miserable for certain players. It's not that it was. It's not like Survival of the Fittest in Legacy, where it was the best card in a control deck, it was the best card in an aggro deck, and it was the best card in a mid-range deck, like Gideon might be in the future.
Card is bananas.
And so I think that you know, it's a wait and see kind of thing. I don't think that Jace is in danger of being banned, especially because if red decks continue to win tournaments, even when everyone announces the death of red cards, haha, we did it. Good job, Ryan Motors. High five.
Teamer Battle Rage and become immense. Who let this happen?
Teamer Battle Rage is a pretty ridiculous card. But when a Tarkus command for 2 mana is sometimes dealing like 7 damage, like that is
I love it.
Crazy. That is.
Make the landfall mode on that relevant. I love it. It's great.
I do too. I love it a lot.
Yeah, with your stupid O2 Merfolk looter.
Yeah.
That.
Exactly. And that's why
creature ever printed.
I remember back in the day when we were talking about Jace the Mind Sculptor being too good, is it going to be bannable, whatever. There was I think there was a tournament the next weekend and whatever, like literally every time Jace showed up on camera, the guy who played it lost. And they were like, see, card isn't even that good, you know. It's like, well, you know what,
all you do is you cast Jace and lose to red cards. Yeah, woo, we did it. But the problem isn't that it's good. The problem is that the good players all play it, and it makes all the games the same.
Right.
Which was the problem with Jace the Mind Sculptor.
There's 2 things. There's an amount of saturation, that how much of it you actually see in the metagame, how many decks play it, how many decks featured it in the top 8, top 16, so on and so forth. The other half is win percentage. Wizards pays very close attention to the win percentage of decks. You remember when Delver decks were a thing in Standard, and oh my God, Delver's too good, screw Delver, I hate Delver so much, blah, 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 blah. They never got over a like 59 or 60% win percentage because Wizards is paying very close attention to that.
It wasn't even that high. Usually
it was...
Delver decks, I think, had about a 50% win percentage. If I remember from my too much information days, they actually were about 50-50. Whereas the blue-white Stoneforge Jace decks were about 55-45.
That sounds more like what I'm talking about.
Enough.
Yeah, instead of like 59, it was more like 49. But you know, there's a win percentage number, whatever that number is. I think it actually is closer to what you were explaining because you built those articles and I didn't. But regardless, it didn't win any more than any other really good deck in Standard than it did Primeval Titan Valakut decks. You know what I mean? But because people were focused and
Did you say
people
Valakut?
Valakut.
Valakut?
Yeah, I don't say Valakut.
Valakut? It just seems kind of Canadian the way you did that. Valakut.
Valakut, or it could just be Southern, because, you know.
I'm not from there, so I don't know how to say it.
How do you say it, Ruben?
How do the locals say it? Probably Valakut.
Valakut?
Yeah, Valakut.
I don't know, man.
Anyway, Delver didn't win any more than anything else. That's
you do,
weird.
and we got to work on that.
You got to cut that out, brah. But no, it's fine. Either way, it wasn't winning more than anything else. So when Jace, Viren's Prodigy decks start to win at percentages that you see 55% and up, then you're going to start seeing Wizard take real close, pay real close attention as to what this card is doing in the format. And that's any format, not just standard. That's any format. But again, he's a card. He's just, and that's the cool thing. It's just, it's the Tarmogoyf factor. He just snuck up on everybody. And then LSV was like, this card's like the best card in the set. You know that, right? And everyone's like, oh my God, this card's the best card in the set. And then, like, we just keep seeing it more and more in all these decks, and it keeps doing better and better. And it's showing up in every main deck that was running blue as a primary component, not splashing it for Treasure Cruise or whatever they were doing. Right. If it's a main deck, I am a blue deck, then he is absolutely in there, and he needs to be in there. Otherwise, your deck is not as good as it's supposed to be, or it could be. I mean, that's just kind of where we're at. Yeah. But I think
great.
Card is great, deck's great.
Deck's great. Jace is great.
Jace great. Everything's great.
Sean won the Open, but Jace is great.
Sean won the Open, that's right. Scoreboard. All I know is Gideon showed up 90 times. He showed up 90 times.
That's a Planeswalker that has 2 white mana symbols in it. That is a lot.
That is a ton. And that's
keep an eye on Gideon for sure.
Yeah.
Gideon's quite good, obviously.
Gideon is crazy.
It's interesting because I remember even when Elsbeth was having her heyday, it's like you never ran 4 copies of her. You ran 1, maybe 2. No, they're running 4 Gideon. Like, they're riding him till the wheels fall off.
Because you can play, because it's actually beneficial for you to play multiple copies. Whereas Elspeth would just sit in your hand, and you would feel terrible if you replaced an Elspeth with another Elspeth, because then they're going to kill that Elspeth and you look like an idiot. For this Gideon, you're like, whatever, Glorious Anthem, everybody throw another one down, start making 3/3s for free. I turn into a 6/6 indestructible all of a sudden. Like, wow, this card is just insane. And it's, because Jace is as rare and as hard to find as it is, it's kind of overshadowing the fact that Gideon was just running this tournament. He was just everywhere. He was insane. So the fact that he's good in aggro, mid-range, and control,
I think that he's the one to keep an eye on more than Jace, because Jace, you can't really put Jace in an aggro deck. It's not. I mean, you could, you could probably have some weird graveyard based, maybe Rally the Ancestors or something. I don't know, but it's a weirder kind of card to try to put in an aggro shell, whereas Gideon lends itself to all 3 types of strategies.
Gideon does all the goodness.
Say, there was
we've seen 4-mana Planeswalkers banned in the past, so.
There was speaking of Jason, a weird list. I was Michael Majors. He wrote a post a couple weeks ago where he did Sultai Death Cloud with Jace and Goryo's Vengeance, and I was like,
Goryo's Vengeance is a nice one.
The fact that Ojutai's command can get back Jace at instant speed is a huge deal. That's a huge deal.
They were also doing that with, I think it was the Dragon Outcast. They were doing the same thing. The little guy where if he survived, I think the one that just poops dragons.
Yes, at the end of your turn,
they were doing that too.
Ojutai's commanding back in. You have to have an instant speed removal spell right then, or he's going to start getting 5/5 dragons. That never happened in World Wake Standard. Never got close. Never was anything, an instant reanimation spell that not only will reanimate a Planeswalker or an amazing mythic like that, but also gain you life or draw you a card, or it's counter non-creature spell, is that right?
Counter, yeah, sure.
I think.
Look, all the cards do so many things.
All the cards do
80 commands. All the lands come into play untapped when you control anything.
God, that's insane.
Bathe in Light gets you anything from your deck.
It counters a creature spell.
Planeswalkers do 8
Bring
things.
the light, bathe the light.
So it's, it's remove soul, it's drawing a card, it gains you 4 life, it's reanimating Jace and or Dragon Master Outcast at the end of your turn. That card is the real winner that a lot of people aren't talking about either. This card is fan-freaking-tastic. Ojutai's command is awesome.
The cards do too many things.
They do.
Ruben just can't.
He's just like, I
need my heroes' downfalls to just destroy creatures and planeswalkers. I don't need them putting counters on stuff. I don't need my cancels to make creatures at instant speed.
I don't like interesting cards.
No, I want Doomblades. I want crawworms.
Ruben, you're speaking my language right now. Like,
just get out of here.
No, I want all the pieces moving. I want another Lorwyn limited set where like everything is complex and it's just great, and there's all these things firing off, and you got to be, you
all
got to
these
pay attention.
complex things. Like what I did was Gold Medal Stalwart and Wizensen.
Yeah,
that's what I did.
That's what I'm talking about.
Standard. That's not complicated
that's
at all.
I was talking
with things.
I was talking about limited.
Oh, limited was a little bit different.
Limited was pretty crazy, and won by the best Magic player, John Finkel, at that Pro Tour.
Sure.
Shocker. Happened.
But when the best players, here's the real overarching thing about old Jace, the Mind Sculptor, and new Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, is that here's the real thing that Wizards pays attention to when they're looking at banning cards and formats, is the deck good in the hands of only good players? Because the win rate of blue-white Stoneblade Callblade was about the same as the win rate of standard Jund when Bloodbraid Elf was a thing, and Bituminous Blast, and two dragons, double dragons, or whatever that card was called.
Yeah.
And Blightning. Those two decks had similar win rates, but they didn't ban Blightning. They didn't ban Raging Ravine. They didn't ban any of the cards from Jund. Why? Because the win rates of the bad players, quote-unquote bad players, were about the same as the good players, even though they were playing the same decks, because Cascade is a much more random mechanic, and you can't control it as much, whereas all of the games with Callblade played out exactly the same. You would play the same 2-drop, you'd play the same 3-drop, you'd play the same 4-drop, and then you'd fix your draws for the rest of the game with all the shuffle effects that you had and the Jace the Mind Sculptors. All the games would play out exactly the same, so the best player won every time.
Sure.
The best player doesn't win every time when you play Jund. So it really comes down to how did the games play out? If the games play out in such a way that the best player wins every time, then the variance is entirely removed and Magic loses a lot of its casual fan base, and then you have to start doing something.
Sure, and I mean, and also just sort of one little note on that, while we're speaking of Callblade, it's a really fun memory I'd like to share, which is back in 2011, I was at Pro Tour Paris, which was basically Pro Tour Callblade, where they literally built Callblade for the first time. I was sitting in the, I went into a Paris hotel lobby, and there was like all the CFB crew. Chapin was there, Ben Stark was there. They were all talking about the deck, and they were all like literally writing down their deck list for the Pro Tour, and I think it was Ben Stark. He was like, "What are we calling this? What should we call this deck?" And then Patrick Chapin said, "Callblade," and it was just like this moment.
You were there for it? That's awesome.
And I knew. I was like, we have like literally defined a part of Magic history with those words that he just said, because I knew that deck, like as soon as it started taking over everything and it was better than everything, and those guys were like, crazy excited about playing it, and obviously it did what it did. It was great. I was like, wow, that's a real seminal moment in Magic to see.
That's the last time that a format was really truly broken, right? That's the last time that one team really just broke it by themselves. A person on that team was going to win it. Like if you ran that Pro Tour an infinite number of times, a member of that team was going to win the Pro Tour 80% of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I'm starting to think of like breaking formats. It to me is like the mono blue deck at Pro Tour Theros.
But multiple teams had that.
But multiple teams did have that, and they were the only ones to have that. Like,
true.
Who was it? I can't remember who it was. Someone came up to me and they were like, you realize that Wizards gave you like one of the best previews ever with sort of Feast and Famine, and I was just like, well, I am now. Like after they give you Squadron Hawk. At the time. Seemed really great, but like now it's really insanely great. It's basically Time Walk on an artifact. It's nuts. All right, so anyway, we're going to move on to Gathering the Townsfolk. And Aaron, I want to pitch this one to you to talk a little bit about the women of Magic the Gathering.
Oh man, you didn't even like give me like any sort of lead in, like our own Aaron Campbell, like. You're so bad at this.
The highly illustrious Aaron Campbell, blessed be unto her, was featured in an article. Aaron, grace us with your presence.
See,
please.
Evan, that's how you treat a lady.
Nice.
Come on,
give
now.
us
Ruben.
your synopsis of your experience.
Yep. So, some people don't know this, but my other project is a show called The Girlfriend Bracket, which I started back in March with some friends of mine to kind of be a female counterpoint to shows like the A-Team and Brainstorm Brewery and things like that. And we have steadily become more popular since then. And there's a website called Gadget, which is for women in tech, women in gaming. And one of their writers Universe had sent me a tweet and asked if she could interview me for an article that she wanted to write about women in Magic. And I said yes, of course. And she said that she wanted the article to be positive, like it wasn't going to be a, how terrible the scene is for us or how terrible the culture is. It was meant to be, women who are doing uplifting things and bringing other women into the game. And so I gave her an email interview. She asked me for some pictures of myself and my co-hosts, and I gave her some of those. And on Friday, the interview posted, and I was featured along with Tifa Robles. Certainly the list is not exclusive. Like, there are plenty of women who are doing great things in the game, too many to name right now, but it was a huge honor to be chosen and to have my show be highlighted. And the response was very good. Aaron Forsyth plugged it, Helen plugged it, a lot of people outside of Magic plugged it, and my show got a big boost, and it was just great to be included and to feel like I'm doing some good. So,
Yay!
Yeah, that's super awesome. And so Gadget is a website that features women in all things geeky and tech, or what is the website?
So it's called Gadgette.com, GADGETTE, and they do specialize in, like, they'll do like there's culture conversations about like relationships and psychology, and then there's video game, like gaming reviews and things like that. Just sort of nerdy women site. And the woman who wrote my article, his name is Sammy. She's from England. You can tell by the whilsts, women who are doing a podcast whilst having a laugh, and it's like, whilst, right? And then instead of criticize, it ends with an ISE. So little bits like that. But it was an honor to be included. Like I said, I'm really proud to be part of it, and I just loved it. It was warm fuzzies. Yeah.
Yay!
Perfect. That's very nice.
I like it. So we are going to move on into Going Infinite, our thought experiment for a format that has been growing in popularity. It has been growing in popularity largely because there's this guy named Marshall Sutcliffe, and
never heard of him.
Yeah, some Marshall. I don't know how you say it.
Marshall Sutcliffe.
Yes. Sutcliffe, and
of course.
Yeah. So he's been talking a little bit, along with some other sort of community members of the Randy Bueller varieties and whatnot, of Canadian Highlander as a format. Yep. It is a singleton format where you run 100 cards, one of each. There's no commanders. We're not talking this ain't Commander Highlander. It's just Highlander. But here's the twist. Here's where this format gets really interesting. You may build your deck using only 7 points. And there's only so many cards that cost any points. Most cards cost nothing. But there is a points list. This is on CanadianHighlander.wordpress.com, and you can use up to 7. So, for example, Black Lotus costs you 4 points, and Hermit Druid costs you 4 points. So you can't run a deck that has Black Lotus and Hermit Druid in it, but Demonic Tutor is 3 points, and Hermit Druid is 4 points, so you could run those two together. And there's entire...
As long as you don't run any of the other point value cards. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have, like, all the Moxes are 2 points, and, Natural Order is 3 points. And so you can really kind of say, well, I'm going to put all my points into this thing or that thing, into Survival of the Fittest, which is 2 points, but I want a Time Walk, and it's 3 points. And, you kind of work the rest of your deck around it, and there's all these, like, tempo decks. There's a whole bit where it's, like, the weekly metagame that they're talking about, and you have Boros Aggro, and Jeskai Tempo, and 4-color Wildfire, and Bant Midrange, and all this cool stuff. And it's gotten a lot of people really excited, and they're building decks, and they're taking it to their local shops, or taking it to the big events like the Grand Prix and whatnot, where you'd have a much higher chance of running into people who play this format.
Yeah.
And this is literally the first time, when you kind of mentioned it this evening before the show, that I had ever heard of it.
Which is kind of shocking, because apparently this format's been around forever. If you go to their website, CanadianHighlander.wordpress.com, it's been around for like a long time.
I'm a little confused. I'm looking at the points list, and I'm seeing like 20 or 30 really, really old cards, but I don't see anything current. Like, am I missing something?
So they've updated some of the cards. So the thing is that, like, a lot of the old cards are just broken, right? Like, Time Walk is a really, really good card.
Yeah, it's just
they recently added True Name Nemesis. They added a point to that, for example, but nothing that they've printed in the last 5 years is anywhere on the level of Black Lotus or a Tinker, right? As Evan can attest in his Urza's Saga upcoming Forgotten Lore, I'm sure he'll tell you all of the broken things that happened in Urza's Saga.
I finished Urza's Saga, but now I'm on to Urza's Legacy, but I'm doing the story of Urza's Legacy, which kind of spilled into Urza's Saga because the way they told the story was really weird. And they also talked about characters that they never put on a card, really.
I do hate that. But anyway, going back to Canadian Highlander.
Canadian Highlander. Keep it
let's
focused.
Put Canadian Highlander on a pedestal for a second. So the key thing that's different about Canadian Highlander from a player's perspective is aggro is a thing.
Yeah.
And tempo is a thing, which these aren't things in Elder Dragon Highlander.
Right.
You built a value deck, or you built a control deck, or you built a combo deck. You don't have Jor Kadeen as your aggro general. Like, you just don't have aggro decks in Elder Dragon Highlander.
Oh.
And then recently, tiny leaders became a thing. Right. And then those sort of devolved into combo decks and sort of aggro, but like aggro combo. Again, there aren't really multiple archetypes. The thing that I really like about Canadian Highlander from a theoretical perspective is that you can have a true control deck, you can have a true aggro deck, you can have a tempo deck, you can have combo decks. Like, they're all super interesting and intricate. And the other thing is that the format is fluid. Right? So if let's say blue tempo decks like fairies style decks are becoming too prevalent in their supposed metagame, you can add points to the Ancestral Recall. You can add a point to it. You can add True Name Nemesis to the list of cards that cost points to try to take away some of the blue aggro prevalence. You can and it's super customizable month to month, and it's all centrally located on one website and one Twitter account, by the way. If you guys want to learn more about Canadian Highlander, follow @CanHighlander on Twitter. Yep. Run by the guys that run it out of Victoria, Canada. And it's gotten a lot of attention. It started with Marshall Sutcliffe, who talked about it at great length with Eric Froelich, who I know is quite obsessed with the format as well, as is Athena Elantris, who is, they're both quite obsessed with it. She has a photo on her Twitter of all of the Hermit Druids that she picked up for this format.
Nice.
Among other people like, Chris Van Meter, and as you mentioned, Randy Bueller. I mean, there's a ton of folks who are really getting into it.
Sure.
And it seems like it's really attractive to tournament level players, which is not something that I can say about most Highlander style formats.
And that's what a lot of, like, that was a lot of the excitement around Tiny Leaders, is that it's a 1v1 format. It was like, finally, the commander for the spike. You know what I mean? And it was like, oh, wait, they broke it, and then it's not really fun anymore. Whereas this, you have this kind of fluid way of saying everything's okay, and we'll just keep adding points to things that are not the most okay, and then we'll just kind of, because they originally had Black Lotus at 5 points, and they said, well, you know what, we're going to take it down to 4 points because maybe that's not really necessary, and like letting it, be in a few more decks, or letting decks have a few more points as an option is a thing. But it certainly seems really neat. You have your red deck wins, you have your Team or Tempo, you have your Esper Control. Deck. I mean, Oath of Druids, you got Splinter Twin, Storm, like all that stuff is there.
Here's the other cool thing about this format is, for a normal Highlander format, there's a set deck size of usually 100 cards. Sure. Or if you played like Prismata back in the day, or Prismatic, you had a 250 card deck.
Okay.
Let me educate you. Hold on.
Oh, God.
So if you have between 100 and 199 cards, you get 7 points. But if you have over 200, you've got a Battle of Wits deck,
there you go.
You get 14 points. So now you can add more things. So it adds a little bit of deck choice, and I'm not sure that anyone would, be better with more cards in their deck, but certainly it's worth experimenting with. And the fact that it's within the rules of the game to try it means it's slightly more interesting for me.
Nice.
Do you want to know what deck I would play?
What would you play?
Dredge. Right. Dredge. My guess is Dredge.
They don't have a Dredge option.
But they will.
Yeah. So in the meantime, though, I found an Enchantress deck. And Ruben, before you say anything, there's something you're going to like in here.
Here we go.
You'll see a single copy of Earthcraft. That's the card you
like. Earthcraft.
I'm just saying, girls.
Earthcraft.
There's Earthcraft.
Nice.
We got some Elephant Grass here, some Eidolon Blossoms, and Life from the Loam.
All right, so you get yours and I get mine. All right,
absolutely. We all get bacon on our cheeseburgers.
There we go. Everybody's bacon on everybody's cheeseburger. Everybody wins, man. That's how it works.
Everybody.
That's cool.
There's some Mindslaver for you.
You want to learn more about Canadian Highlander? @CanHighlander. Go to CanadianHighlander.wordpress.com. It's an interesting format, and anything that interests pro players but is a casual format is always interesting to me.
So.
Absolutely.
There's also a squirrel nest in here too. There's so many
ways.
Of course, because with Earthcraft you got your infinite squirrels. And that's fantastic. It's one of those that I feel like Tiny Leaders was kind of a flash in the pan. And I kind of feel like people got excited about it, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, now they're just buying out the most powerful 3 mana, legends from the Legends set, and so everything can cost infinite money, and there's these people who can make money off of it, and it's kind of this EV thing. Whereas this is a real kind of sort of fluid, has a metagame, can adjust itself, doesn't necessarily have to be like a commander thing. It can just be, you're building these really cool decks that do this one thing really well, and good luck. And it just seems really sweet. I'm digging it.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I mean, I'm past my days of playing EDH or Commander, but this is anytime super competitive players get interested in things that aren't super competitive Magic.
But see, you brought up.
I kind of got to take a second look at it.
I don't know. You brought up a really good point, Ruben. Something I never liked about EDH is sort of the the difference in the social contract with that. Where if I'm playing a format like this, I want to have fun. Like I'm not here for like a turn 5 infinite combo. I want to live the dream. Like I want to play goofy stuff. I want to throw up my hands and go wee. And part of the reason I lost interest in Commander was I was running into the really spiky Commander people that wanted to win on turn 4. They didn't want you to have that kind of experience. And I worry that it's kind of the same thing with this, where I see that there's elements here that would appeal to me in terms of wanting to have a gay old time and just play all the things and live the dream. But I can also see that there's elements here again where people would want to play to crush you, and that would turn me off from the format. And that's
going to be play group specific.
I don't know. To me this looked, and again, I just learned about this, so I'm just trying to take it all in. This to me looked like a Spikes casual format, and as weird as that sounds, because if I'm playing Storm, that's not a fair deck. That's not a good time for both people at the table.
But if Singleton Storm, it's got a little bit of fanciful nature to it.
So I probably shouldn't tell you that I started putting the pieces together for Legacy Storm.
Oh my God!
And
really?
You're complaining about being a Spike?
Wow! Wow!
It's not Dredge though.
You
can't tell me not to play Dredge and then complain when I play another deck.
I don't care if you play Dredge. You can play Dredge all day. I don't think it's very fun to watch. And
you lose to whichever 2-mana white enchantment you want to. You can choose which 2-mana white enchantment you want to lose to. Build Affinity next time.
Yeah.
And you can lose to a different 2-mana white enchantment.
Affinity.
All right, let's move on.
All right, fine. It's a really cool format, though, and I think it's really neat. We're going to move on to splash damage. This week's splash damage is something that's not necessarily directly from Magic or for Magic, but it's related to Magic. And there was an unlikely recovery of $15,000 of Magic the Gathering cards were recovered thanks to a store that was paying attention to someone who had about 3,000 of their most valuable Magic cards stolen, and somebody broke into their home, got 3 boxes of cards worth 10 to 15K and a bunch of other stuff. And, they weren't expecting the thieves to bring the stolen cards to, his favorite shop 20 minutes from his house. But sure enough, this dude come in with all of his stolen stuff and was trying to sell them. And luckily the store owners were like, hey, can you call the cops, on the DL? And sure enough, they came and arrested him. So that's what happens when you're...
As reported on Magic Mike's First, Magic cards have value.
Nuh-uh.
You heard it here first.
Dude.
You know what I found so interesting about this is I'm reading this article here, and this guy who experienced the theft, the victim, if you will, so they're asking him what he thought about the whole thing. And at one point he goes, I'm not really emotional. I just thought it was a huge inconvenience. Young man. I would have taken my earrings off. You would have had to carry me out of the store hitting and kicking. There's no way I would have been chill about this if this had happened to me. And at the end too, they were he's charged with stolen property. It sounds like he's made a lot of bad choices in his life. I don't hate people. He's just made bad choices. No.
It's a good thing this guy didn't steal from you then.
We'd have had a whole different article. Yeah. Whole different video report.
And steals 3K worth of Magic cards, loses foot in fight.
Eye gouged out. Actual eye gouge.
I just couldn't believe it how zen he was about the whole thing. He's some things happened and it was a little uncomfortable, but...
You're just going to be holy. You're
what?
1 black, I cast eye gouge. That's what happens to you.
New stories like this come up every once in a while. And sometimes they have sad endings. And sometimes they're the community came together and actually defeated evil. Which this is one of those, which I find hilarious and uplifting a little bit that, this guy's collection got stolen. And Magic cards are real difficult to insure, by the way. I had a friend who had like a very large Magic card collection that he got insured, and then when I forget how, I think that he was driving somewhere and his car broke down and he had to like walk to a gas station, and then by the time he got back, some of his Magic cards were missing or something weird like that. And he made an insurance claim, and the insurance covered it. But it's like very difficult to cover Magic cards because they have fluid prices, and people are like, so these really have value, and you're talking to your insurance agent about Magic cards is like not a thing you want to do.
That's a thing that you can do.
It's a thing you can do. It's just slightly more difficult.
I had my cards stolen. I'm sorry.
The fact that this sort of solved itself, first of all, let's all take a minute and thank God that criminals are stupid. Because this guy could have driven 2 hours away in any direction and probably not gotten recognized. Right. But luckily, criminals are stupid. And so good job to Level Up Games.
There you go.
The guy that helped Jeremy Bylander get his cards back.
Going to an IQ there
Pretty cool. Cool. You've been up there in St. Paul, Minnesota. So good job to everyone involved, except for the criminal. I guess good job to him for being easy to find. I mean,
to quickly touch on the insurance card thing, which I think is always interesting because you can do it. You can talk to your insurance agent and you can say, I will give you a list of the cards that I own and the conditions of which they're in and the value, the market prices of which they have, depending on sort of what they need from you. And while Magic cards don't have serial numbers, which is a big problem with the police, because the police are just like, this card could be this guy's or it could be yours, but there's no indication of ownership beyond I just passed cardboard back from a hand to a hand. So it's hard to get them to really recognize and appreciate the value of these things. Right. But regardless, it is a thing that has happened, and there have been claims that have been fulfilled. Whether or not they have gotten those cards purchased back, like by the insurance company from a Troll and Toad or a Cool Stuff, where they will buy them or give them an amount of money equal to their value on that website. Basically, somewhere where you can say this is the market value and this is the place where they have that market value. But not all insurance companies will do it, and it's not something you should just blindly expect that you can get with like your homeowner's insurance, whatever. You should be able to talk to your insurance agents and say, hey, this is a valuable thing I have in my house. Right. I would like to make sure nothing happens to it.
Yeah, and if this guy broke into this guy's house, he must have, first of all, known that Magic cards are expensive, and second of all, knew that this guy had a lot of them.
Right.
And then knew where they were.
And knew which ones to take.
Yeah. So, there's a bunch of other layers to this news story that could happen later once this guy gets charged. He's currently on like $30,000 bail or something like that.
Right.
So this story could develop and be more interesting, or it could just sort of fade away. I'm interested to see where this one in particular goes, just because insurance didn't get involved at all. This was all community based.
Absolutely. Aaron, you were talking about you had some cards stolen?
Yeah, I just, on a serious note, it's like, I had some cards stolen when I first got into the game when I was a teenager, and I probably didn't have anything worth money, but it's a really crummy feeling. Like, even if you don't have any, even if you're not rolling with, Mind Sculptors or anything like that, just having something of yours that we do get invested in this game, and we do have our pet decks, and, even now, it's like, I take my deck with me everywhere I go. It's really goofy, but it's always in my messenger bag, and I'm always ready for a duel, and that's fine, but, that my decks have always been sort of extensions of myself, and maybe that's just a Johnny thing or whatever, but I can't tell you how many times I just, as a reflex, I will check my bag and make sure it's still there, if I'm on a busy bus full of people. Oh my god, I don't feel it. And just the false heart attack that I give myself at the thought of it being gone, if I were to really look back there and have it be gone, it would hurt, and it did hurt. And I remember, even as a teenager, it gave me a complex where, the 2 times that my cards were stolen, I never really recovered from that, and I don't think people understand until they've been through it. It's a really, really crummy feeling.
It's very violated, unhappy, like someone took this thing that I loved and treasured, took time into making or building, even if it's just not something, again, like it's not all Mind Sculptors and Moxes, like my cool like soldiers deck or whatever that I spent time and money and effort building and getting, and getting the right sleeves that I wanted and putting in the deck box that I wanted. And now it's just gone, and I have to start from zero. Like, you did that to me. That's awful feeling, and that's what we want to be able to say, that we pulled together and we took down the forces of evil, and rah.
And the forces of evil are being held on 30,000.
And the forces of evil are complete idiots. So we're doing okay.
Complete idiots, to be fair.
Right. So we're going to move on to our finisher. As we do each and every week, we take a humorous look on a question that we may or may not be asking. So I'm going to put
the picture.
I'm putting an image on the screen right now. I'm doing it. If you're watching this,
don't put the image on the screen.
Oh, I did it.
Beg of you.
It's too late. because
blurred?
it's not
For
blurred.
those of you on
We
the
have-
Twitch chat, Ruben cannot bear to look at the image you are about to look
he
at.
can't handle it. He just can't.
So disgusted.
This
at
was a
this
Sliver
happening.
Queen balloon sculpture that wasted
This
a
is
lot
a
of
balloon sculpture of Sliver Queen, just to clarify.
of Sliver Queen. Keep that in mind, boys and girls. Sliver Queen. So from DJDrummer is the user from the top Reddit thread this week. Created a 10-foot tall balloon sculpture of Sliver Queen that you see on your screen right now if you're watching us on the video. So which Magic card would you like to see get the balloon sculpture treatment next? And I'll kick it off here because I would like to see Jace Vryn's Prodigy get all balloons sculptured up in honor of its overly inflated price.
I see what you did.
Inflated.
That's just good balloon-related puns.
There we go. There we go. Aaron?
I would like to see Narset Enlightened Master in balloon form because nothing has ballooned more and then popped in recent memory like Narset.
Oh, more pun humor.
I hate it.
Balloon oriented.
Well, I'd like to see a balloon sculpture of Evan Irwin.
Oh,
Picture
here we
that
go.
in your head. I'd
Here
like
we
to see a
go.
balloon sculpture of my co-host here, Evan Irwin, because he's already so full of hot air
Oh. I'll get some ointment. I'll do that.
for the burn.
For that
Right.
burn.
Get out of here.
The burn is so...
Take the image down.
The image has been down. The image was down
Look at
since...
it.
I can't
Since
handle
we
it.
started,
This.
you're watching the feed. It's a little bit behind our live show. It goes down eventually. Ladies and gentlemen, that completes our show. Ruben, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Aaron,
Thank you.
you guys were great as always. And we're going to bring us to our final slide in another
okay.
episode of
You
Magic
were
Mics. I thank you very much. I'm full of hot air, if you didn't know that. Thank you for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. I'm thanking my co-hosts, you guys, for watching. Hope you follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, and do everything social that tells people that we exist and that we talk about the Magics. Catch us online at twitch.tv/MagicMics every week on Wednesdays at 11 o'clock. On Twitter at MagicMicsCast. On Reddit at reddit.com/r/MagicMics. And on Facebook at facebook.com/MagicMics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com or find us on iTunes or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.